have a short mini lesson to talk about how some of the books we've read have changed us. I love being a teacher. I'm going to start out by
It's a constant learning experience. Every day is different, and the challenges have to do with human beings. I don't deal with paper. I deal with real-life issues where there is no right answer for every child. It's a case-by-case basis, and I think that makes it very dynamic.
The conferences that I go to, the workshops that I attend, the professional books that I read are just the greatest part of my learning and keep me going at this stage of after 27 years. It gives me the boost to really keep on working in teaching.
Okay, in this poem that I'm handing out, I want you to see if you can read it just for 3 or 4 minutes and see if you can find any places that the image in your mind changes, or the feeling, the mood, or tone of the poem changes. And see if you can find the words that help you notice that change, like detectives. Okay?
Being a professional teacher to me means that I have a commitment to every student in my room, and that means I have to go and be responsible with my own homework.
The second part of that, for me as a professional growth, is to make sure that I do present at least once a year.
Okay, that's my intro. If what I originally had intended was for us to talk about this whole definition of critical literacy. If I could hear from you, what are the definitions of critical literacy that you hold?
Empowering students to ask questions and to read things with an inquiring mind, not to accept it as gospel because it is in print.
I'll take that as a segue. I have on your outline, the very first piece I have, I invited an adult who was a scientist, a parent in my classroom, happened to be by that day, and said, would you read this and let's have a talk about it. Let's examine it. And here's what, it comes from chapter 3, Things That Hurt. And the strategy I'm looking at is called questioning authority. But I don't begin with that. I begin with the text. It goes like this.
Because I find, as I try to find out more or enough to at least stand up to the tensions of or pretension of standing in front of my peers to know something, I realize I really dig at the issues and asking Trillium about nonfiction or putting my ear closer to the ground to see if what I'm reflecting on, what I'm making sense of in my classroom really has use for teachers outside my own region.
Well, I can remember when you talked about this book, didn't you? You went down to...
Yeah, you remember my whale story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well that's, I use it now as a metaphor for the whole writing process, really, as I used to tell it as just an adventure story of a true experience in the on-the-ground research that sometimes you have to do it for a book, but it's really, the idea of kayaking beyond where you are comfortable in the darkness is often very much an experience of of pushing yourself in the writing process, and then just like that whale who came up out of the deeps, sometimes the best ideas will just kind of emerge, from the very darkest, deepest depths, and so it's become a story for explaining about just the mysterious process of creating a book.
Sometimes at conferences, we get a chance to hear an author speak or talk with an author whose work we use in our classrooms. It's nice to get the book signed and take that book back to class, and you can use your first-hand experience of the author as a way of talking about the author as a human being and bringing in ideas about the author's perspective.
I love this notion you just said of looking so huge. Things look so huge from a distance.
Yes, yeah.
that I think sometimes we have difficulty dealing with issues because we can't solve them, with, be it homeless, be it environmentalism.
That's right. That's part of why I use the trail metaphor here. I wanted to take a like slightly new tack on the wonderful image of the hero's journey, but it's also when you're on a trail you do have distance. When you're on the mountain slope, you have a sense of larger kind of perspective, and you can feel very small sometimes, but also like you're important. You're seeing something important. It's like when we look at the stars. So that larger perspective is really important.
You can use these encounters to ask students things like, what do you think the author's voice is? Do you think that the author interpreted the piece in pretty much the same way as you did? Having this personal knowledge of the author is a great way to look at the ways in which you, in fact, might have multiple readings of the very same text.
I'm going to interrupt for a second. What could the wall have represented?
I'm always trying to improve upon my instruction.
What's one difficulty or one challenge or one wall that you might face? Asia?
It's like something that you have to climb over if you have to do something but you really don't want to do it.
So, and if it's something that's difficult, it's standing in your way, can you think of any examples?
Like if you really want to, like if you're in a deep sleep and somebody wakes you up and you know that you have to get ready or something, but you just want to go back to sleep.
Waking up when you feel really tired. Oh, that was me the other day. I couldn't get my head off the pillow.
When I finish a lesson and I say, that worked or that didn't work. And if it didn't work, I need to improve upon it.
I have a connection. Last summer, I hurt my knee and I wasn't able to walk for like a couple of weeks. And I kept on trying to walk, but I really couldn't. And people had to stand by me, and I can't really go places I wanted to. And then when my knee healed, I was able to walk.
So that was keeping you from having fun and doing all sorts of things you wanted to do.
I was playing my game once and I couldn't beat Magneto, so it took me a while. So I went in the kitchen, mate, and I sat down and talked to my mother. But then when I went back, I beat it.
And you beat the game?
Yeah.
I'm a little unclear. I'm a little fuzzy on that. But it was something that was hard to do, and you had to try hard. Okay.
I think that idea of reflection is something you have to do in order to grow. You're so disciplined to go home and actually write in the journal. But that's,
sometimes it's very short.
Yeah, but even then, just taking that time at the end of the day in your classroom to sit back and reflect on what worked and what didn't work, or how can I improve this or that, and what can I do about it. I think is really important, and it helps your own personal development as a teacher.
Absolutely, and I think 9 times out of 10 where things went wrong is where my planning or implementation went wrong, or I hadn't foreseen something and I hadn't quite planned it properly, and I say that's where I went wrong.
And that's what reflection does for you. So often we would say, well, it didn't work because the kids were misbehaving that day, or it's nearing the end of the school year, oh, it's right before the holidays. But when you reflect on your practice, you can often say, well, it's something that I've done wrong. Yeah. Here's something I'm going to tweak next time to make it a little bit different and see if it works out better.
One of the things I do when I write in my journal is I just take note of all the things I've been critical about myself for the day. But I feel like I'm on the tip of the iceberg. The more questions I ask myself, the more questions there really are.
A really powerful tool for me is videotaping or peer coaching. So if you could work out an arrangement, and this is some of the best staff development, if you could work out an arrangement with someone so you take turns, even if it's just once a week for 15 minutes, have someone come into your classroom, do a videotape, and hand it to you when you're done. Or even an audio, or self-tape. Just set it up in the corner and look at it, even if it's just a little chunk, or an audio tape of you leading a discussion or something like that. And if you get a chance to listen to that more than just about anything else helps you to reflect on exactly, why did I say it that way? Or couldn't I put that a different way that was more inviting? Just listening to yourself or watching yourself really helps.
That sounds like it'd be painfully informative.
For a while it is. I think you get used to it, but it would be, and it helps more than about anything.
Like any professional, teachers can benefit greatly from evaluating their own strategies. It can be invaluable to look at what's happening in the classroom, how the discussions flow, how deeply the students are thinking, and ask yourself some honest questions about what worked and what didn't work. Basically, to rethink what you've been doing and how you might approach things from a different angle, and reflect on how your teaching practices can help students to think in these more complex ways.
When I'm planning, it's sort of like a brainstorm of ideas of things that would be a possibility. And then I try to find resources that maybe this has been done, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel altogether. I can modify or add to something that may be already out there to use. If not, then I start from scratch, and then I go through how will I set up that learning experience. And so I just, procedures just set up the steps on what that piece would look like in reading workshop or writing workshop. Oh, some neat shapes here. It's good. Let's see. So Jesse, what do you have going there?
Stars and circles.
Well, that's neat. I like that. What about the stars? Are we saying? Let's see.
I kind of did a poem inside the star.
Tell me the poem.
Can I read it to you?
Yes.
Stars are cool, stars are bright. You can see stars in the dead of night. And then I did stars, like, out here, and then stars are right on the side.
Mm-hmm. What made you think of that?
I don't know, I just thought of a shape. Thought of stars.
The way that I teach doesn't fit everybody by any stretch of the imagination. I love to go with the flow. That is when I'm feeling I'm most responsive to the needs of kids. So you've heard two strategies for the use of the Post-it. One was research in vocabulary. If you're unsure about the language or what things mean, you could look it up, and she used a visual cue. And the second she calls, what's on your mind? What are the questions that you're wondering about? Have any of you ever written down questions in the Post-its? Yeah. Okay. I set up a situation. Today it was the fishbowl. And I had anticipated that being about a 5-minute exercise and then a break. And it developed into a much more detailed conversation than I had imagined.